Let me ask you something. Why do you think you're exempt? Why do you, as a person of color, as a minority in this country, think that you're exempt from the wrath of a man who has made his career off of dividing people like you and me? Why do you think that just because the target isn't on your back right now, that you're exempt from the wrath of the future? Do you really believe that you're special, that your family is that different, that it can escape that wrath? Because let me tell you something. Nope, you're wrong. Nothing escapes that wrath. Not in that America, not in the potential future America. This video is going to be a little bit of a rant, I would say, just because it's been something that's been sticking in my craw. I've had these conversations with friends and coworkers and family members. I've had this conversation at the barbershop. I've had this conversation with a lot of folks, and it's very interesting how people have this individualistic thought process that, well, if it's not happening to me right now, and it's not what they're saying, but in their rhetoric and to follow up and to support their beliefs in voting a certain way, it's been, well, it's not affecting me right now or my family right now. So out of sight, out of mind. And I'm talking about not just white men, white Christian men. I'm talking about minority men, minority women, people who are first or second generations from immigration, and they're having these views. And I get it. I work in middle class America. I work in an industry that allows us to have pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps and be successful. I know that these people that I'm talking to, my friends and my coworkers, come from family members that have picked themselves up by their bootstraps and then gotten to work and become successful. So I kind of can see how you can come from the mindset of, well, for these social programs and these folks who are looking for handouts and scholarships that are, or not scholarships, but student loans that are waived and entitlement programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and welfare and things like that. I can see how if you have gone through school, done the hard work, paid off your loans, worked hard, made a good living, and your family has done the same, that you might have these same views. But it's very, very short-sighted, in my opinion, to just say, well, those folks who aren't the same way that I am probably didn't work as hard, or they're just not as smart as I am or as good as I am. That's pretty elitist, in my opinion, even coming from someone in the middle class. But I get it. You worked hard to get where you are. And I'm not taking anything from that. But I'm saying don't ignore the plight of the people who aren't where you are. It isn't always because they didn't work as hard. Sometimes the cards that you're dealt don't allow you to reach these certain levels. And it's unfortunate, but that is America. And I've kept from saying the candidate's name, Donald Trump, for a reason. But again, that goes back into my people pleasing, and I'm trying to get away from that. I'm trying to get away from the whole people pleasing thing. So my friends and my family members and my coworkers who support Donald Trump, especially when I come to them and say, well, what about this or what about that? Oh, I'm not into politics, or I haven't seen that one, or I didn't hear that. Well, that doesn't mean that you should make an ill-advised decision by voting for a person just because they have an R by their name, or even vice versa, voting for someone just because they have a D by their name. Be well versed in the decision that you're making. And don't be a single issue voter. Being a single issue voter is being short-sighted and being closed-minded. You've got to look beyond just yourself. And in this case, it's not just about the economic issues or the inflation issues or the tax cuts that you might get or the student loan forgiveness that others are getting. This is about social equity. And when you're having these discussions, again, why do you think you're exempt? First, it was the border. No. Actually, first it was Barack Obama and was he born here and does he deserve? And then it became a border issue of all of the Latinos and Hispanics coming across and they're automatically criminals. And I'm talking to people who are descendants of Latinos and Hispanics. And again, why do you think you're exempt? What do you think the narrative would have been about your parents or grandparents as immigrants 20, 30, 40 years ago? Do you think that the narrative would be different? Do you think that now, because your family is here and they're good, and yes, there are bad people all over the world, but not just at the border. There are bad people here that were born here, descendants of immigrants or not. And to be honest, most of us are immigrants who are here. White, black, brown, yellow. Most of us are descendants of immigrants here. And there are bad people here, and there are bad people at the borders. But every single person who's trying to cross the border isn't a bad person. And just imagine the long trek that these people are taking from Central America. Do you hear about a significant number of crimes that are being caused on the way up? You think these are people are criminals who are just waiting to commit crimes in the United States at the same time as they're trying to get citizenship? If there are some people who are like that, I'm sure there are. It is certainly not the majority. We should have a process that allows us to vet these people very quickly. And I'm not saying that we need to have open borders, so please don't get this twisted. But again, with the rhetoric about an immigrant family is, well, they're criminals. They only send their worst. Who is sending these people? These people are coming here for a chance. We are the land of opportunity. I don't know where that got lost in the translation. We are the land of opportunity, and these people are coming for an opportunity to better themselves. And if they are running away from a government, they are running from a government that has oppressed them. They are looking for a chance. They are looking to work hard. They are looking for not just the American dream for the sake of American dream. They're looking for the American dream to support the American dream. You can probably guess where this sort of started. It started with the Tony Hinchcliffe, his set that he had at the recent Trump rally at Madison Square Garden. And I get it that Donald Trump didn't say these words specifically, but he didn't denounce these words immediately after like any normal person would. And when we talk about, isn't that weird? Isn't it weird that you wouldn't have the decency to denounce this immediately if you didn't agree with it? If somebody said something about me that wasn't true, I would immediately say, no, I didn't say that. Or no, I don't agree with that. Or no, I don't believe that. Immediately. So that it's not following me around. I'm not going to let that hang over my head for 1 or 2 days, especially if I don't believe it. But that's not what happened. So when a comedian calls Puerto Rico a floating pile of garbage, a floating island of garbage, and then follows up with or insults a black man in the crowd as a caricature of carving watermelons for Halloween, why do you think you're exempt? Just look at the list. Barack Obama, Latinos, Hispanics, Haitians, whole countries. The list goes on. Why do you think you're exempt? Puerto Ricans just got added to the list too. Why do you think you're exempt? Because he hasn't come after Cuba or China or the Philippines or what have you? He is on a path of destruction. And in my opinion, any person of color is not exempt. That's just it. That just is what it is, in my opinion. And so while you may be exempt now, that doesn't mean you're exempt forever. So beware. I've gone on long enough, but I am going to have a couple of takeaways. 4 reasons why I don't think you should be exempt. And the first one is that history never forgets. Again, I went down the list. All of these people have been oppressed and have suffered the wrath just for being people who have sought better lives underneath the oppression, or try to get better lives around the oppression, I should say. These people are trying to cross the border for a better life. These people went to Springfield, Ohio for a better life after an earthquake devastated their country. In Puerto Rico, same thing, earthquakes and hurricanes. And of course, their island is dealing with some issues from some infrastructure issues, but these people are Americans and we're not supporting them by giving them the dollars for a better infrastructure. Yet and still, we want to criticize, or people want to criticize and say, well, it's dirty down there. What? History repeats itself because it never forgets. The second thing, your struggles aren't unique. What if you needed to have IVF to help you to have a child? Maybe you didn't, but what if you did need that? What if your wife was going through a miscarriage and needed some help? Understand what the process of that is. She's bleeding out, bleeding, and may need to go to a hospital, but she can't be seen because of a law that hasn't been passed. What if tomorrow that your wife, sister, mother, daughter, granddaughter needed health care that had suddenly been banned because the party in power didn't think it was pure enough? What if it's your family that's trying to cross the border and they decide to lock them up in cages, or recently crossed the border and they decided to deport the entire family, those that were already here and those that just arrived? What if that was your family? And the third thing, the economy won't save you. Those tax cuts won't save you. If you remember and think about it, like those people who say, well, I'm voting for Donald Trump because my taxes were lower. Remember, the tax cuts were approved. But guess what? Those tax cuts for the middle class and lower roll off next year. But those tax cuts for the billionaire class, those are indefinite. You think a billionaire on stage like Elon Musk or Donald Trump understands what you go through as a middle class citizen? How? How? They've never had to go through the things that you go through. What do you mean they understand your struggle? How? Because they've seen it on paper? That makes no sense. Again, the same way I started this YouTube journey, reading and trying to understand without actually having to live it. You don't understand it unless you've had to live it or live adjacent to it. So to think that someone that far removed from your process understands what you're going through just because they see it on paper or they can spit out some rhetoric, it makes no sense. And then the fourth reason that you shouldn't think you're exempt is, how do you know you're not the next target? Look at the list. Muslims, Palestinians, Mexicans, Latinos, Hispanics, Puerto Ricans. What makes you think that you're not next or that you can't be next? What makes you think that you're so special? Is it because you're not facing their wrath today? There's always tomorrow. And why take that risk of tomorrow being that next day when you and your family are the target? You never know. But I'm telling you, there's a higher risk when you're voting for one side versus when you're voting for the other. Why do you think you're exempt?